With the Mets' recent trade for Alexander Canario, I had a feeling there was something going on with Starling Marte. Now, with Carlos Mendoza's recent comments, I'm more convinced than ever. We're going to talk about that and more today on Mostly Mets. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of Mostly Mets. I'm Jimmy Mack, and today's topic of conversation is going to be Starling Marte. Now listen, as soon as the Mets went out and traded for Alexander Canario, in my mind, there was something going on. Whether it was Marte or Nimmo or whatever, now it seems to me, after hearing Carlos Mendoza's comments yesterday about Marte, that something is wrong with him. Either something is wrong with him or it has something to do with Marte, right? Mendoza basically came out and said that Marte is not close to playing in spring training games and that he's kind of day to day. He has good days, he has bad days, and he specified that the Mets still see him as a major leaguer. Now, to me, them coming out and saying that they still see him as a major leaguer is kind of a strange thing to say. Now, I didn't see the video. I saw this as a tweet. I couldn't find the video, but I saw it as a tweet from one of the beat writers. I forget who it was at the moment. But maybe it was a question that was asked of him. I'm not sure. And listen, I'm not a reporter. This is all just my opinion. This is how I feel about the situation. But one of three things is going on with Marte right now. The first thing could be that he's injured, right? That's probably the most likely thing that's going on. It's either an old injury that didn't heal properly, or maybe he did something right as he came to spring training, but we haven't seen him on the field. You know, you're seeing videos of everybody hitting, everybody out there, and you see him there. He's there walking around, sitting in the golf cart with Juan Soto, but Marte, you haven't seen swing the bat. You haven't seen in a game. You don't hear anything about him at all. Now, obviously, from the last couple of years, this is a guy that has struggled to stay on the field. And he's only getting older, right? I think he's like 37, 38 years old now. And he just struggles to stay on the field. So I would not be surprised at all if he's dealing with some injury. Now, what's interesting to me is the Mets have been very open and honest with everything going on. And we haven't really heard anything about an injury to Marte. So it's odd. It's strange. Maybe they're just limiting him, so that he can try to stay healthy for the season. Maybe it's just a little nagging thing. Maybe he has a little pain somewhere. But it's just strange to me, right? You don't see him anywhere. You don't see him taking swings. You don't see him at batting practice. He's just not really around. So the first most likely thing is that there's an injury we just don't know about. The next thing could be that they have a trade lined up, right? Getting Canario seems like kind of a Marte replacement, a right-handed DH kind of guy. He was once a top prospect, right? He was DFA'd, but he was DFA'd because they didn't have a spot for him in Chicago. I'm sure there was other teams who put in claims for him or would have tried to go get him, right? The Mets swooped in, gave cash, got him, and made it work. You don't bring a guy like that in if you don't at least have some opportunity for him, because he doesn't have minor league options. So you can't bring him in to then move him to the minor leagues or stash him somewhere. That's not how it's going to work with him. He either makes the team or he's going to be somewhere else. So to me, it's possible that they have a trade lined up. Now, it doesn't mean that it's going to happen today or tomorrow, but they could be talking to a team about matching up salaries, especially. There's a couple options for that. One very good option and likely option, if a trade is to happen, would be with Arizona for Montgomery. Jordan Montgomery was really good in 2023, signed a short-term contract. He was a Boris client and didn't get the long-term deal he was looking for, so he signed a similar deal to Blake Snell. But he had a terrible season, right? He signed late into spring training. He never had a spring training, and he struggled all year. He didn't have a full year, a full build-up to the season. So he really struggled, and he had like a 6.5 ERA. It was bad. He was terrible. But I don't think that's who he is, right? You look at this guy in 2023, and he was close to an ace. You know, he was pitching extremely well, and I think he had like a 3 ERA for the entire season. And he went into free agency thinking he was going to get a long-term deal, and a lot of people said, hey, go get this guy because he's on his way up, right? He's a 30-year-old pitcher who's on his way up. And obviously it didn't work out for him the same way it did with Snell. Snell opted out and then signed with the Dodgers on a long-term deal. Montgomery had the bad season, so he opted into the deal. But the Diamondbacks want him gone. The owner of the Diamondbacks has already said, it was a mistake to sign him. We wish we never did it, blah, 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 after last season. And basically everyone thought he's going to be gone. He's going to be traded for nothing. They just want his salary off the team. They want him gone. And it didn't happen. Maybe this is a way to line up with the Diamondbacks. Marte's owed $19.5 million. Montgomery's owed $22.5 million. You take our salary, we take yours, and we call it a wash. Everybody go on about their business. Mets get another depth piece in their rotation and a guy who has a high ceiling. Now, he might only ever be a fifth starter now, but so what? With Montas out, with Minaya injured right now, it would be great to have another depth piece in the rotation. So that's really, I think, the best case scenario in all this is that they have a deal lined up and they're going to go out and get Jordan Montgomery. I don't know that it's likely, but it's something that's possible. One that is impossible, that's not going to happen no matter how much Brandon Tierney or anyone else wants it to happen, is Stroman to the Mets. Now, Brandon Tierney went on his radio show saying that there's talk that the Mets are trading Brett Beatty for Marcus Stroman. That was never the deal. That was never discussed anywhere except for one writer who is completely just always wrong about everything. Said that it would be a great matchup for Beatty and Stroman. No matter what we think of Brett Beatty, he's 25 years old. He still has talent. He still has some value. Now, he's not going to be the centerpiece of a deal that goes out and gets you a big-time pitcher, but he has enough value where you're not just going to throw him away to take on the salary of Marcus Stroman. Plus, Marcus Stroman left the Mets in such a terrible way, he would never be welcome back, even if he was free. Even if you gave up nothing for him and the Yankees paid him his entire salary, you just wouldn't want him. Is he a better pitcher than what they currently have? Is he better than Griffin Canning or Paul Blackburn? Probably. But he's not worth it to the Mets. He's not. Steve Cohen would never want that back on his team. It's just not a fit. So even for Starling Marte matching up, they make a very similar salary. There's only like $1 million difference in their salaries. Stroman's still not going to happen. I understand on the field it would make them better, but in the clubhouse, in the organization, it's not worth it. You'd rather go out there and get Quintana for $7 or $8 million than get Stroman and pay his $18 million, right? It's not worth it. So those are the two matchup kind of trades that you can match up salary. Now, I'm sure there's plenty of other teams who have players they want to get rid of, right? I'm sure that if you offered the Tigers Marte for, Javi Baez, they'd jump at it in a second. It's never going to happen either, right? It has to make sense. Those two on paper make sense. Only one of them really makes sense in reality, and that's Montgomery. Now, the other trade destination that you could see happening would be the Marlins. The Marlins have to add about $20 million in payroll for them to be eligible or to not be penalized for not hitting their luxury tax threshold. They would basically have to spend $20 million or miss out on $40 million. So it's kind of a no-brainer for them to spend $20 million. Marte makes $19.5. Could the Mets salary dump Marte for a bag of balls to the Marlins? Just say, here's some salary. You give us basically nothing in return. You give us some salary relief, and you can have them. Could that be something that happens? Sure, I could see that happening. That's probably, in my mind, the most likely thing to happen if it's a trade. But even then, I don't see that necessarily. I don't see a trade really happening. I don't know who's really going to take Marte. But you never know. It's something that could happen. The third thing that I don't know if anyone's really talking about it right now, because Marte is saying all the right things. He's saying he'll accept any role the Mets give him. He's happy just to be part of the team, blah, blah, blah. But it can't feel good for him to be what he thought was a large part of the team, even though we all understand that he's declining and that he's not the same player that he was and he's not going to have that same, effect on the team anymore. If you're a player and you've been a good player for a long time, you don't necessarily accept that. You don't want to accept that maybe you're not the same guy you were before. And maybe he's just not very happy being on the Mets. Maybe he doesn't want to play. Maybe he's saying, I'm good, like I'm just hanging out here. I'm not really interested in playing in games. Trade me. He might be saying trade me. It was said by Jim Duquette, I believe, on SNY, former Mets GM Jim Duquette. He made a statement that Marte actually requested a trade. I always thought it went that once the Mets got Soto, they went to him and said, hey, listen, we know you're going to play a diminished role. If you want more at-bats, we'll trade you. We understand if you want to be an everyday player, we can look and see what's out there. And then Marte agreed to that. But what it seems like by Duquette is he actually requested the trade. When they signed Soto, he said, I want to be out. So if that's the case, he might just not be happy. He might just be saying, why didn't you trade me? And I guess he has to see it from the other way of who really wants to trade for you at this point. But he might just be upset, and he might not want to play. He might be a little disgruntled at this point. And if that's the case, then I think it would be smart for the Mets to try everything they can to trade him, and leaving him off of the field and not exposing him to get an injury is a good thing. If you don't want him to get injured, don't play him, and then try to trade him. That could be what's going on too. But it's clear to me that something is happening with Marte that's just not out there. That's not being shown. Now listen, if he goes out and plays in a spring training game tomorrow and this is all proven completely wrong, it could happen. But in my mind, there's no doubt something is happening with Marte. He's either injured, or he's unhappy, or they're keeping him off the field to try to trade him. It's one of those three things. We'll find out soon enough, probably within the next couple days, hopefully within the next couple days. And that's really all I got on Marte. If you're still here and you're new, please subscribe. Doesn't do anything, it doesn't hurt you at all. It doesn't cost you anything, and it helps me out. Give me a like, comment what you think's going on with Marte. Is he hurt? Is he getting traded? Is he disgruntled? Let me know. And until next time, let's go Mets.